Welcome back to Mudwalkers, everybody. My name is Chris. For a lot of Christians here in America, they feel like it would be immoral for them to participate in naturism as a matter of their conscience. Well, there's a deep sense of wrongness that people have in contemplating naturism. Is there really a way to, get over that? I'm going to say yes, because that used to be me. I used to feel that way about naturism, and then... hello. So what I can tell you is how I did that, how I changed my own conscience when it comes to naturism. I would say there are really three basic stages when it comes to changing your conscience about something. And it starts with openness, and then beliefs, and then feelings. Changing your beliefs and feelings can be really difficult and borderline impossible for a lot of people. It requires you to be open to change, open to improvement. And that openness is often the hardest obstacle to overcome for people. Are you willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads? Are you open to changing your mind? If not, then your conscience is probably going to stay right where it is right now. I'm not squinting disapprovingly. I'm squinting painfully.
The fun sucks.
I know one older woman right now who... last time we talked about naturism was ages ago, but last time we talked about it, she gave me her usual line, which always starts with, "I will never." If that's your attitude about whatever it is, you are not open to the evidence. You are not open to changing your mind. I've actually since stopped talking to her about naturism because of statements like that, because she's just not open to following the evidence where it leads. So the first step in changing your conscience is being willing to follow the evidence where it leads. No, I don't mean saying you're open to following the evidence. I don't mean even thinking that you are open to the evidence. I mean actually being open to where the evidence will take you. Chris, what do you mean thinking? If I think I'm open to where the evidence will take me, then am I not open to where the evidence will take me? Not necessarily. Here's a good litmus test. What if you think you're a nice, rational, open-minded person? But then I ask you, do you remember the last time there was an issue you really, really cared about, but then evidence contrary to your opinion on it came along and you went, I'm wrong about this thing I care about a lot, so I'm going to change my mind about it and believe the opposite of what I used to believe about it, a belief I held very dear to me. When was the last time you really changed a near and dear belief? Have you ever done that? A lot of people haven't. If you've never done that, you're probably not that open-minded, and even if you are open-minded, it shows that you haven't really studied a lot of stuff. When you are open to changing your mind and you start consuming a lot of evidence on a lot of issues, you're going to start changing your mind on stuff. So if you haven't changed your mind about important issues before, then you may not be as open-minded as you think. A good example from my life is I was just about as opposed to naturism as someone possibly can be when I was in my teens. Then I looked at the evidence and completely did a 180. As you can see, I did a complete 180. I used to believe the conventional modesty paradigm, but it just isn't biblical. It's just pointless, toxic legalism is what conventional modesty boils down to. So I don't hold to that anymore, and that was really difficult for me, as you can see in this video up here. How and why I got into nudism. It was not a fun process, believe me. I was dragged into naturism kicking and screaming, believe you me. I did not want this to be true, but it turned out to be true, so I changed my mind. And ever since I really got open to following the evidence where it leads, I have changed my mind about several other important things in my especially theological life. Theology meaning, your beliefs about spirituality, the afterlife, about God himself. Obviously, the thea at the beginning of theology, the thea there means God. It's Godology. It's your study of God, your theories of God and related things. So in my theology, I've changed quite a few things that I cared a lot about that are not really relevant to the video. If you check out our Zoom calls, though, our monthly Mudwalkers Zoom calls, maybe I can tell you some of that if you ask me. But like I said, it's not really relevant for this video. If you're not open to changing your mind, then your conscience is going to stay right where it's at, probably stuck in legalism. But once you are open to changing your mind, once you are open to following the evidence wherever you leads, then we can start talking about beliefs. But first, let's talk about Patreon. This episode of Mudwalkers is brought to you by Patreon. These guys are my patrons. They're making the channel possible. They're keeping my work sustainable. So everybody, thank you so much for what you're doing on Patreon. Patreon is an online service where you can financially support creators like myself, hopefully especially me. But these guys are the ones who are currently supporting my work. I think this cause is worth supporting. I think it's worth talking about, otherwise I wouldn't be out here doing it. Naturism has been a powerful force for positive change in my life personally, and in the lives of a lot of my friends that I've since met in the Christian naturist movement as a whole. It's really, really good for you, mind, body, and spirit. Don't underestimate the power of God's design for you. God didn't design us to live in all the clothes and the steel and glass and concrete buildings. He designed us to live out here, like this. Oop, that's a microphone. This is the human. But he designed us to live without clothes. And granted, it's a fallen world. It's a dangerous place. And so we have to wear protective gear sometimes, like helmets, gloves, shoes, or yeah, even clothes. Clothes are useful. But anyway, the Patreon tiers get access to a bunch of cool stuff, cool benefits as my supporters. At the $10 level and above, everyone gets access to a monthly Zoom call with me and the other patrons at that level and above. It's a great time to get together, ask questions, and share stories, swap ideas, etc., etc. Also, I have a website now, in case you didn't know, nakedmeanshuman.com. Sign up for that newsletter. You get lots of cool updates, like upcoming videos and stuff like that, but you also stay tethered to my content stream, even if the YouTube gods decide that they want to terminate my channel again. So yeah, check out the website, newsletter, patreon.com. It's cool, link tree in the description down below. I'm rambling, so let's get back into the video. So now that we've talked about being open to the evidence, we can start talking about beliefs. So once you're open to following the evidence, you do your research thoroughly and prayerfully, and you arrive on a certain set of evidence. And then you evaluate that evidence, and that becomes, and the thrust of the evidence becomes your belief. Now, sometimes what this looks like with some of the issues that I've changed my mind about, is that I didn't change my mind from one firm position to another firm position. I took something that I thought was just clear and obvious in the Bible. Just boom, that's how it is. And I get into the biblical evidence and the historical evidence and the cultural stuff, and I go, wow, that's nowhere near as clear and cut as I thought it was. So that's a giant IDK on that issue. No longer sure about that one. Not sure I ever will be sure about that one. Very interesting stuff. There are an awful lot of those, by the way, that when you really look into them, the deeper you look, the murkier it gets. So I'm very suspicious of people who have really hard and fast positions on certain things, especially eschatology. But I'm getting off the subject. Let's get back on point here. In case you haven't figured it out already, I really like talking about theology. So as soon as theology comes out of my mouth, I just want to go off on a bunch of cool tangents because it's a cool subject. So you form your new belief or lack of belief based on the evidence. But what's important here is that you need to not take social pressures into consideration, because we all have a community. We all have certain people that we're beholden to intellectually. I grew up Southern Baptist, so when I started taking on certain theological stances, that made me something of a pariah. Case in point, I know I said I wouldn't get too much into theology, but you shush, is what's it called? Eternal security. Once you become a Christian, it's impossible to become a non-Christian again. That doesn't hold up to Scripture, so I have switched my perspective on that, which is an unpopular position among Southern Baptists. But I did it anyway because it's not about social pressure. Social pressure is not a good reason to form and hold a belief. Social pressure has no epistemological power at all, or it shouldn't at least, but for a great many people, it's one of the most important things they take into account when forming their beliefs. Don't do that. That's not a good metric of truth. I mean, for crying out loud, hundreds of years ago, everyone thought that slavery was fine. Do we really want to say that social pressure is how we determine truth? If that's so, then slavery would never have been abolished in America. Think about that for a second. So, you have formed your new belief or lack of belief based on the evidence. But this is where things get interesting, because now we're going to talk about your feelings.
Max! Help me! I'm feeling.
I'm not out to downplay feelings. Feelings are really important. We're emotional beings. Yahweh is an emotional being. We're made in his image. Emotions are a good thing. But they don't always line up with our beliefs. For example, let's say I was vegan. I wasn't, but let's say I was. And I'm a recovering vegan. I looked at it biblically, medically, nutritionally, and all the things, and figured out, wow, eating meat is pretty okay. But then when I try to go out to eat with my friends and I walk past a steak on the table, I still see an emblem of animal pain and death. My feelings do not align with my beliefs. I believe that what I see before me is perfectly fine. They're just eating an animal. People eat meat. That's fine. Morally speaking, intellectually speaking, I'm okay with that. But in my feels, I'm like, person, that was a living, beautiful being created by God. Why would you just use it for your own personal pleasure? You can eat lots of high-protein plants. Why would you kill a beautiful mammal just to enjoy this meal? As somebody who practices an animal-based diet, I'm not a carnivore by any means, but as someone who holds to a pretty animal-heavy diet, let me tell you, the previous analogy does not reflect my personal views or convictions at all. It's just an analogy. So the point is, I think it's okay, but I feel like it's wrong. This is where I turn to self-talk and meditation. No, I don't mean Zen meditation where you're trying to purge your mind, although that is an interesting practice that I think has some value. I don't think that should be necessarily your primary meditative practice. I think that we should be using meditation more in a contemplative way, generally speaking. And that's what I mean by meditation here. When you're doing self-talk and meditation, I mean meditating on something. Like, for example, the veganism thing. I believe steak is fine, but it doesn't feel fine. Why doesn't it feel fine? Introspect on that. Think within yourself. Think about your values. Where is this coming from? Do your feelings really align with reality? If they don't align with reality, then change your feelings. Whoa, 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 Chris. Change your feelings? Yes. Hear me out. So, I realize that I'm not a super heavy guy, but I have a major sweet tooth. I really struggle with certain sweet foods, especially chocolate. I love chocolate. And there's this particular super cheap, ultra cheap brand of chocolate chips my wife gets for making cookies for the kids. Okay, and for a while there, I started just eating handfuls of these chocolate chips. I'd be editing a video during the day, I'd go get a drink of water, the chocolate chips are right there at eye level, so I'm like, well, I'll just, it's just a little bit, But a handful or two every day, not great. So I've really put the kibosh on that. And one of the things I started doing was I read the ingredient list and didn't like what I saw. So what I started doing was, when I looked up at that packet of chocolate chips, I would say out loud, that's poison, I don't want it. But Chris, you do want it. Yeah, I desire it. I desire it, my belly is asking for it, my tongue is asking for it. I can feel that desire. I don't want it. That's not where my values are. I don't prefer to eat that. I would prefer not to eat it overall because that's important for my health. Something else that I did with a different food, it was jelly. Something I did for a different food was I actually started saying, I value my long-term well-being over my immediate pleasure. And by golly, it worked. Not every time and not right away. But as I started doing this with one unhealthy food after the other, I've started just being able to tick unhealthy foods out of my diet. I've found that personally to be way more effective than trying to wipe out huge swaths of food and, do this whole radical diet change. What's been more effective for me is just picking one thing that I know is bad for me, that I know I can do without, and so I just take that off. And it pops back up sometimes, and I got to put it back. But you just work on that one until it's basically always down. Basically, it doesn't bother you anymore. You can just leave that one. You move on to the next item, and you flip that one down. And you keep flipping it down until it stays down. And you move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. Now, I don't even like those chocolate chips anymore. They don't taste good to me anymore. And when I see the package, I don't want them anymore. It doesn't look good anymore. You want to know why? Because now my feelings and my beliefs are congruent. Congruent? Now they're congruent. You can change your feelings. It takes some work. It takes some training, takes some resolve and discipline, but you can do it. Say it out loud. Say what you believe, and you will begin to feel it. In case you are still not quite on the same page as me with this, let's talk about self-loathing for a second. So, if someone is dealing with self-loathing thoughts, if someone that you knew was constantly saying out loud, I'm worthless, I'm nobody, I'm unlovable, why would anyone like me? No one wants to spend time with me. No one thinks I'm worth anything. Bro, don't say that stuff. Don't say it. Not only do other people need to, stop saying that to you, you need to stop saying it to yourself. If you start changing your self-talk around that, instead of saying, nobody loves me, you can say, God loves me. Or if there's anybody in your life that thinks you're worth more than a bag of rocks, think about that person. That person loves me. I am lovable. I am worth something. Yeah, my social life looks pretty bad right now. My work life sucks. Things are not great right now. But you know what? I am worth something. I'm worth doing something for. I'm worth doing something about. When you have that positive self-talk, it can change the way you feel about yourself. You can change this. You can take charge of your own emotional life. And again, it takes discipline, it takes resolve, and it takes reps. You've got to stick with it. But you can change how you feel. So if your beliefs and your feelings are not fitting together, self-talk, 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 meditate, meditate, meditate. Talk about this stuff. And if possible, go and experience it. Go experience the thing that you have beliefs about. If you're a vegan who thinks it's fine to eat meat, but it doesn't feel good, consider ordering a steak. Now granted, if you believe it is wrong, oh wow, it's finally cool. I'm boiling out here. But if you believe it's wrong for you to eat a steak, don't do it, okay? Don't do it. The one who has doubts is condemned if he eats. The Bible could not be clearer about that. If you believe it would be sin, don't do it. But if you believe it would be okay, but you just don't feel great about it, you're sure about your belief, I say give it a shot. Work on your self-talk and go experience it if you can. It might change everything for you emotionally. What if steak ends up being your new favorite food? Huh? It's one of my favorite foods. I gotta say, it's pretty good. So if you believe, if you in your heart of hearts believe it's okay for you to eat steak, go order a steak and try it. If you're dealing with this with naturism, where you believe, you know that naturism is a-okay. It would not be immoral for you to participate in naturism, but your feelings are not there. Well, as long as your beliefs are 100%, go try it out. I mean, if you're going to a reputable resort, you'll be safe. A place like Cypress Cove in Florida, Star Ranch in Texas, or any number of AANR resorts all across America. Go give it a shot. And when it comes to naturism, one of the most common things I've encountered is that people here in America, whether it's subconscious or not, they really are terrified of the idea of naturism. And the problem with terror, the problem with fear, is it has a way of closing minds, not opening them. If you're terrified of something, that's not going to really open up your mind to possibilities. It's just going to put you in survival mode. So it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to get people over that fear. So I don't know exactly how to deal with the fear problem. I mean, I'm working on it. I personally, what I'm doing right now is I'm just trying to have open conversations about naturism with people. Yeah, the issues, but also my experiences and the experiences of my friends and acquaintances in naturism. I think that is helpful, but I don't know if it's the best solution, like the most effective one. If you guys know more about that than I do, by all means tell me in the comments. For now, I leave you with that. Awe ke u no do ai.